The heavy thud of Zara's body hitting the reinforced floor plates sounded like a wet sandbag being dropped from a freighter. I checked my internal chronometer. 10 seconds. That was how long the Deathworlder had lasted against Thorak. Thorak, a 3-meter-tall Gorvani bruiser with muscles like knotted ironwood, didn't even look winded. He stood over the tiny human, his 4 eyes blinking in sequence, waiting for me to signal the medical drones. "I told you," whispered Instructor Cal Alphas from the observation deck. 10 credits says she doesn't walk out of that arena. I didn't take the bet. I am Velkara, senior instructor at the Nexus Combat Academy, and I don't gamble on certainties. The human, Zara Blackwood, was a mistake. A biological error. She was 1.6 meters of soft, pink skin and brittle bones. She had no mandibles, no natural armor, and no venom. To the Academy, she was a publicity stunt. To me, she was an annoyance that was currently staining my pristine training floor with dark red biological fluid. Then, the impossible happened. Zara's fingers twitched. Then her arm moved. With a sound that made my own chitinous plating crawl, the grinding of displaced ribs, she pushed herself up. She didn't scream. She didn't beg for a timeout. She simply spat a glob of blood onto the floor, wiped her mouth with the back of a bruised hand, and looked up at the giant towering over her. "Sequence incomplete," she rasped. Her voice was thin, but it didn't shake. "We still have 2 minutes on the clock, Thorak." The arena, filled with the galaxy's most lethal trainees, went dead silent. I remembered the day she arrived. I had called her an intimidating houseplant. I'd watched her for weeks, waiting for the high-gravity runs or the bone-crushing pressure of the Gorvani training drills to break her. Every morning, we ran 30 kilometers in the 4G chambers. Zara was always last. She looked like she was dying, her lungs wheezing and her skin turning a frantic shade of purple. But every morning, she finished. When the Zenthri speed demons hit her with strikes faster than the eye could follow, she fell. And then she got up. When the Valaxian tactical officers outmaneuvered her in the sims, she lost. And then she asked to run the simulation again. It was irritating. It was unnatural. In the animal kingdom, when you are beaten, you submit or you die. You don't just reset. "Finish it, Thorak," I commanded, my voice echoing through the speakers. I wanted this farce over. I wanted my betting pool winnings. Thorak didn't need to be told twice. He lunged. A Gorvani strike carries enough kinetic energy to dent starship bulkheads. He swung a massive lower fist in a haymaker that should have taken her head off. Zara didn't dodge. She couldn't, she wasn't fast enough. Instead, she stepped into the blow, taking the impact on her shoulder to stabilize her position. The sound of the bone snapping was audible even through the barrier. But as Thorak's arm was extended, Zara used her one good hand to grip his sensory antennae. She didn't punch him. She didn't kick him. She simply hung on with the weight of her entire body, pulling his head down into the path of her rising knee. Crack! Thorak roared, stumbling back. Blue ichor leaked from his nasal slits. He was shocked. Not by the pain he'd felt worse, but by the sheer, suicidal illogicality of the move. She had traded a shattered shoulder for a bloody nose. It was a terrible trade. No sane predator makes that deal. "What is she doing?" Commander Nexus asked, leaning over the railing. "She's not trying to win," I muttered, my 3 meters of height suddenly feeling very fragile. "She's trying to outlast him." The fight turned into a nightmare of biological persistence. Thorak hit her again. She went down. She got up. Thorak threw her across the arena. She hit the wall. She got up. Thorak crushed her hand in a grapple. She used her elbow to strike his throat. She got up. The betting pool participants were no longer cheering. They were staring at their data pads in horror. The medical scanners were screaming warnings. Zara's internal temperature was spiking. Her muscles were tearing from the sheer strain of moving under 4G gravity with multiple fractures. By any law of biology, her brain should have shut down from shock minutes ago. But Zara Blackwood wasn't a biological machine. She was a human. Thorak was slowing down. His species are apex sprinters. They evolved to kill in seconds. If the prey survives the first minute, the Gorvani overheat. Their metabolic cost is too high. Thorak was heaving, his four eyes wide with a sensation his species rarely felt, fear. He looked at me, pleading for a whistle. He looked at the fragile human who was currently resetting her own dislocated finger against the floor plates. Zara stood up. Her left arm hung limp. Her right eye was swollen shut. She looked like a ghost draped in a torn flight suit. She took a step forward. Then another. Thorak backed away. The 3-meter-tall conqueror of worlds took a step back from the tiny, broken girl. Stay down. Thorak bellowed, his voice cracking. Just stay down, you crazy primate. I've broken you. You're broken. Zara stopped. She tilted her head, her one good eye fixed on him with a terrifying, predatory focus. Humanity didn't survive Earth by being the strongest, Thorak, she said, her voice a low, raspy crawl. We survived because we're the only ones who don't know when the story is over. She lunged. It wasn't a graceful move. It was a desperate, stumbling tackle. Thorak tried to intercept her, but his movements were sluggish, his muscles clogged with lactic acid. She bypassed his guard, wrapped her legs around his neck in a desperate chokehold, and held on. Thorak thrashed. He slammed her into the floor plates. He hammered at her ribs. He tried to tear her off. Zara didn't let go. She just tightened. Her face was buried in his neck fur, her teeth bared in a snarl that looked less like a student and more like a demon. 10 seconds. 20 seconds. 30 seconds. Thorak's movements became frantic, then weak, then still. The giant collapsed, pinning the human beneath his massive weight. The arena was so quiet we could hear the hum of the station's life support. I stood there, my mandibles twitching. I looked at the betting pool. I looked at the signed medical evacuation papers. The medical drones swarmed the pit. They lifted Thorak's massive body off of her. I expected to see a corpse. Zara lay there for a moment, staring at the ceiling. Then, her chest heaved. She took a ragged, agonizing breath. She rolled onto her stomach. She pushed. Her arms shook. Her vision was clearly swimming. But she got to her knees. I walked down the ramp, my heavy boots clicking on the metal. I stopped a meter away from her. I looked down at the houseplant that had just strangled a Gorvani bruiser. The assessment is over, Student Blackwood, I said, my voice betraying a hint of something I hadn't felt in 40 cycles, respect. She looked up at me. There was blood in her hair, blood on her teeth, and a fire in her eyes that made me realize the Galactic Council hadn't sent her here to learn from us. Did I pass? She whispered. I looked at the data screen. Thorak was being loaded into a recovery tank. The rest of the class was backing away from the arena edge as if she might jump out and get them next. You didn't just pass, Zara, I said, reaching down to help her up, the first time I had ever touched a student. You just ruined the Academy's entire curriculum. I looked out at the observation deck, at the horrified instructors and the silent warriors. We spent centuries perfecting the art of the killing blow, I told them, my voice carrying to every corner of the room. But we forgot to account for the species that treats a killing blow as a suggestion to try harder. I looked back at Zara. She was leaning on me now, her weight negligible, but her presence feeling like a supernova. Tell your government the exchange program is a success, I said. But tell them to send teachers next time. I think we're the ones who need the lessons. Zara smiled, a bloody, terrifying human smile. Don't worry, instructor, she rasped. We have plenty more at home just like me. I went home that night and deleted the betting pool. You don't bet against a species that views exhaustion as an opinion and death as a temporary setback. Because if that was just a human student, I never want to see a human soldier.